He said he would marry me and give me the phoenix coronet and red bridal robes, but in the end, he broke his promise. He fell off a cliff, lost his memory, and was saved by a girl. He knelt in front of the palace for 3 days, swearing to break off our engagement and marry that girl instead. The emperor, troubled, summoned me to ask my opinion. I knelt down, trying hard to hold back my tears. As the crown prince wishes. Ding! RoyalStory reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. As my wedding date with the crown prince approached, I was confined to my room every day, embroidering my wedding dress under the watchful eyes of my nanny. Even a fleeting glance at a sparrow in the sky would earn me a long lecture. Miss, what's so interesting about the sparrows in the sky? The phoenix in your wedding dress is far more precious. In my hand, half of the phoenix's wings on my wedding dress were embroidered, beautiful and proud. After more than half a year of work, it was finally nearing completion. The exquisite and perfect wedding dress was just like me. I am Hazley Widener, the legitimate daughter of the Widener family. My father is the prime minister in court, and my grandfather was a former tutor to the emperor. Our family is prestigious, and I, naturally, am the most prominent among the young ladies of the capital. Consequently, my family's expectations for me were very high. I had to excel in all the arts, music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. My father even invited a nanny from the palace to teach me. She was very strict. Once I became the crown princess, she would no longer have control over me, and I could raise a flock of sparrows in the Eastern Palace, the crown prince's residence. But when I thought of the crown prince, I felt that being made to embroider my wedding dress every day was not a hardship. The crown prince, Bryan Tetlow, and I grew up together as childhood sweethearts. He was a noble and upright gentleman, like a celestial being descended to earth. As the emperor's only legitimate son, Bryan was established as the crown prince early on and was raised according to the standards of an heir. He excelled in all aspects: etiquette, music, archery, charioteering, and writing. He was clear-minded, virtuous, and widely loved by the court and the people. He was the perfect crown prince, and I was the perfect future crown princess. Our engagement was known far and wide. No one could have predicted that such a perfect match would one day be disrupted. The day I finally finished embroidering my wedding dress, the nanny came rushing in, saying that the crown prince had been attacked and fallen off a cliff while on a trip outside the capital to manage the waterworks. He had been missing for a day. My hand trembled, and I accidentally pricked my finger, a drop of blood falling onto the phoenix's wing. The situation was dire, and I had no time to worry about the bloodstain. I hurried out to find my father for more information. My father reassured me that the cliff wasn't very high and that the emperor had already sent people to search for him. For the next few days, I hardly slept, chanting prayers from morning till night, hoping for the crown prince's safe return. Perhaps my incessant prayers reached the ears of the gods, for the crown prince was found a month later, though severely injured and not fully recovered. I was overjoyed and, without bothering to change into my usual elegant attire, rushed to the palace in my plain clothes. I was a frequent visitor to the Eastern Palace and even had a pass to freely enter and exit the palace gates and the Eastern Palace. So, I made my way to the Crown Prince's hall without any obstacles, only to be unexpectedly stopped. The head guard of the Eastern Palace, Zayden, stopped me, looking troubled. "Miss Widener, the smell of blood inside is heavy. It would be best if you didn't go in." He was an honest and straightforward person, and after speaking, he seemed uneasy, as if he had done something wrong. Sensing that something was off, I gracefully curtsied. "Lord Zayden, I am the Crown Prince's future wife. Since he is injured, I must see him even more. I am not afraid of the smell of blood. Please let me in." Zayden couldn't find a reason to continue stopping me and reluctantly stepped aside. I maintained a composed exterior but was anxious inside. I pushed open the door, only to see a delicate girl holding a bowl of medicine, spoon-feeding the Crown Prince. I froze. The girl had her back to me and didn't notice my presence right away. The Crown Prince, however, saw me and looked at me with unfamiliarity and wariness. "Who are you? How dare you trespass in the Eastern Palace?" Why would he ask me that? Did he not remember me? A sense of panic arose within me, but I maintained my composure as a lady from a prestigious family, speaking softly. Your Highness, I am your fiance, Hazley Widener, the legitimate daughter of the Widener family. His face instantly turned pale. He looked away from me and hastily explained to the girl, Erika, I don't know her. I don't like her. Don't misunderstand. He asked who I was and called her Erika. The difference in intimacy was clear. The girl turned to look at me, and I finally saw her face. She had almond-shaped eyes and cherry lips, her features clean and innocent like a child, not as beautiful as me, but with a certain charm. Seeing me, her eyes dimmed, and she murmured, so you have a fiancé, then she awkwardly said, should I leave? She placed the half-full bowl of medicine in my hand and tried to leave, but the crown prince stopped her. He took the bowl from me and drank the rest of the medicine in one gulp, without the patience he had shown before. He gave the girl a reassuring smile, but when he turned to me, his expression was blank. He was naturally gentle and polite, even when saying heartless words, he spoke softly and courteously. Miss Widener, I fell off the cliff and lost my memory. Erika saved me. We are in love, and she is the only one I recognize as my future wife. He spoke each word clearly. As for our engagement, I only just learned of it. I have forgotten everything from the past, so this engagement should be considered null and void. He lost his memory? He doesn't remember me. How could this be? Pale-faced, I excused myself, stumbling slightly but quickly regaining my composure. After leaving the hall, I found Zayden to ask him what had happened. Zayden was one of the people who had searched for the crown prince, and I wanted to know all the details of how they found him. Seeing my serious expression, Zayden didn't dare to hide anything and truthfully recounted the scene. The crown prince had fallen off the cliff and been swept downstream by the river. There, he was found by the daughter of a local doctor, who had gone into the mountains to gather herbs. She saved him and brought him back to consciousness. That girl, born during the cherry blossom season in March, was named Erika Presley. The crown prince lost his memory, and Erika, having saved his life, naturally became the object of his affection. When they found him, he insisted on bringing the girl back with him and even demanded that she personally feed him the medicine. My heart grew colder and colder. I returned to the Widener family in a daze, and soon after, news spread that the crown prince had brought back a commoner girl. A few days later, the crown prince knelt before the emperor, requesting to annul our engagement. The news of the crown prince falling in love with a young doctor and wanting to break off his engagement with the legitimate daughter of the Widener family spread like wildfire in the capital. The other daughters of the Widener family didn't dare to go out, fearing they would be secretly laughed at. I stayed in my room, not even stepping into the courtyard. My mother brought in a bowl of red bean and lotus seed soup, worried, Hazley, you haven't been eating much lately. Have some food? I shook my head, Mother, I have no appetite. After a pause, I couldn't help but ask, is the crown prince still kneeling before the emperor? It had been almost 3 days, and it started to rain today. He hadn't fully recovered from his injuries. How could he endure it? My mother avoided the question, and I knew that the crown prince was still insisting on kneeling, forcing the emperor to compromise. I took the soup, numbly tasting a spoonful. It was sweet, just the right amount of sweetness, but my heart felt sour, and my nose stung. After finishing a bowl of soup, I put my mother's mind at ease and made a decision, Mother, I need to go to the palace. My mother couldn't stop me. At the palace, I saw the crown prince kneeling in the rain from a distance, his back straight, his long robe soaked, no longer flowing like clouds and mist. I took the umbrella from the maid and walked over to shield him from the rain. It was rare to look down at him, still with his high nose and deep eyes, extraordinarily handsome, yet he felt so unfamiliar. His face was pale, so weak, yet he hadn't given up. The sour feeling in my heart returned. He glanced at me but didn't look at me, still staring straight ahead, his voice cold and clear, Miss Widener, there's no need to hold an umbrella for me. I didn't move, so he shifted to the side, into the rain. His avoidance made me feel humiliated. He used to smile and say he would only marry me, only me, for a lifetime. Now he knelt before the palace for so long, just to abandon me and marry another girl. I tried my best to ignore the bitterness in my heart and cautiously asked him, if I step back and let her be your concubine, will you stop kneeling? Given Erika's background, becoming a concubine would already be a high climb. His expression was cold and resolute. She is the girl I love and cannot be a concubine. Whoever I love will be my one and only for a lifetime. One and only for a lifetime? I wanted to laugh and cry. Hazley Widener, how ridiculous and pathetic you are. I looked up at the rain in the sky, the clouds covering the heavens. After a long time, when my emotions finally calmed down, the Emperor's attendants summoned me inside. The Emperor seemed to have expected my arrival, his face full of disappointment as he scolded the Crown Prince in front of me, saying that he had always been sensible, but now he was infatuated with a commoner girl. Finally, he asked for my opinion. My opinion? If I insisted on marrying the Crown Prince, he probably wouldn't treat me well. Why bother? If I agreed to break off the engagement, I would become a laughingstock and might never find a suitable match again. He used to smooth out all my troubles at the slightest frown. Now he left me in a dilemma. The current Crown Prince doesn't love me. I finally realized this. I knelt before the Emperor, solemnly and word by word, I said, as the Crown Prince wishes. I tried hard to hold back my tears. I am the legitimate daughter of the Widener family. No matter when, I should be dignified. Tears are a sign of weakness and pettiness. The Emperor decreed that the engagement between the Crown Prince and me was annulled, but that was all. He didn't agree to let that girl become the Crown Princess. After all, Erika, in terms of family background, appearance, talent, and virtue, was unworthy of that position. She couldn't even be a concubine. The nanny continued her nagging, "Miss, don't be sad. The Crown Prince is just temporarily bewitched by a vixen. I heard that the head of the Imperial Hospital has already sent a letter to his master, who is traveling abroad, to come back and treat the Crown Prince. Once the old doctor takes action, the Crown Prince's amnesia will be cured soon. Miss, no one is more suitable to be the Crown Princess than you. The Crown Princess is the future Empress, not someone who can be chosen on a whim. Once the Crown Prince's impulsive period passes, he will definitely come to his senses. Rest assured, that little vixen will, at most, become a concubine." "Miss, hey, miss, you can't cut this wedding dress. You spent almost a year embroidering it." The nanny snatched the wedding dress from my hands, hiding it behind her back. I held the scissors. "This wedding dress is designed for the Crown Princess. I won't need it anymore. What's the point of keeping it?" The nanny didn't listen, treating the dress like a treasure and putting it away. She still held hope for my marriage. In fact, not only her, but my parents, relatives, and even the Emperor and Empress in the palace all held hope, believing that he would come to his senses. After all, Bryan and I had shared so many years of affection. It's hard to accept that it could just disappear. But they didn't consider that even if Bryan came to his senses, I wouldn't. I put down the scissors and raised my hand as if to cover my heart. It ached, but my mind was clear and determined. Bryan and I could never go back to the past. Even if one day he regained his memory, the rift had already formed and couldn't be erased. I had been taught to be perfect since I was a child. I couldn't love something or someone that was no longer perfect. Like the wedding dress stained with blood. Like the Crown Prince himself. A few days later, Zayden brought a team to the Widener residence, carrying a pile of boxes. When he saw me, his face turned red with embarrassment. "Miss Widener, the Crown Prince said that since you two have parted ways, the Eastern Palace shouldn't keep the things you sent, in case they upset Miss Presley. Since our engagement, my mother had reminded me to often make clothes and sachets to send to the Eastern Palace and the Central Palace, to show the virtue of the Widener family's legitimate daughter. Over the years, I had sent many things to the palace. Looking at those boxes, they stung my eyes." I smiled bitterly. The Crown Prince is very considerate. Zayden scratched his head, not knowing how to respond. As I looked at those things, many old memories came to mind. When I turned one, at the grab ceremony, I ignored all the treasures on the table, stumbled and knocked over many, and crawled to 6-year-old Bryan, hugging him tightly. The elders and guests were amused, joking that I had chosen the most precious grab ceremony gift in the world. From then on, Bryan and I were deeply connected. He occupied so many of my early memories. Perhaps my gaze was too somber. Zayden hesitantly called out, "Miss Widener?" I snapped out of it, my eyes sweeping over the old items again and again. After a long time, I said, since we are parting ways, the Crown Prince should come in person to show sincerity. You may go back. I turned and entered the Widener residence, not giving Xaden a chance to stop me. My maid, Jade, was furious. Miss, why did you let them take the things back? We should sell them or give them to beggars rather than let them have them. I shook my head. Most of those things bear imperial marks. Commoners can't use them. A few days later, the Widener residence's door was knocked on again. The Crown Prince, with a cold expression, stood outside, and Xaden brought the team again, carrying the boxes. He looked at me, expressionless. I have come personally. Are you satisfied? The Crown Prince stood outside, tall and noble, the sunlight falling on his moon-white robe, unable to warm his cold demeanor. I curtsied. Greetings, Your Highness. Then I didn't let Xaden in, glancing back. Jade hurriedly brought a ledger. I looked at the Crown Prince. The Widener family also has many old items sent by the Eastern Palace. I had them sorted overnight. Your Highness may take them back. As I finished speaking, the gate behind me slowly opened, revealing a row of boxes. Xaden and the others were stunned. I handed the ledger to the Crown Prince. He finally looked at me seriously but didn't take it. I don't need these things. You can handle them yourself. I didn't insist, handing the ledger back to Jade. I don't need the old items returned by Your Highness either. Why not dispose of them all? In the astonished eyes of Xaden and the others, I smiled gently. Throw them into the river. Why? What does Your Highness think? The Crown Prince's eyes flickered, perhaps unsure of my intentions, but he didn't object. The Widener family's carriage slowly approached, and I said, Your Highness, please endure the inconvenience of sharing a carriage with me. He said nothing, boarding the carriage and looking out the window. I sat as far from him as possible, also lifting the curtain to look outside. The carriage passed through the bustling market, slowly moving forward. People recognized the Widener family's carriage, and more curious eyes looked over, whispering, Look, that's the Widener family's carriage. Widener family? The family of the former Crown Princess, who was abandoned. Fragments of conversation reached my ears. I lowered the curtain, my gaze falling quietly on my skirt. The Crown Prince also heard the whispers, turning to me, apologetically. I didn't know they were spreading such rumors. I'll send someone to. I looked up at him. It's all right. We rode in silence. When we arrived, I got off the carriage, and the view opened up. Steep cliffs, lush vegetation. Looking down, the River Wye roared below, its waves crashing. This was the upper reaches of the River Wye, the cliff where Bryan had fallen after the attack. The wind was strong on the cliff. The wind blew our robes, making them flap loudly. I looked into the Crown Prince's eyes. At this moment, I realized that Bryan had a pair of peach blossom eyes. Though naturally affectionate, his eyes were cold and indifferent. He used to look at me with affection and at others with indifference. Now he looked at others with affection and at me with indifference. Beneath his gentle demeanor was cold detachment. To him, I was no different from the rest of the world. I clutched my aching heart, staring at the ground. When I looked up again, a tear rolled down my cheek, quietly falling and leaving a faint itch. I smiled bitterly. Your Highness, I was strictly raised. When I cried in front of people as a child, I was punished to copy books for days and had my hand slapped. You felt sorry for me and told me many jokes to cheer me up. As I grow older, I find myself better at hiding my emotions. Only in front of you can I laugh, get angry, and express my joy and sorrow without holding back. The Crown Prince stood gracefully, his eyes devoid of any pity, though he seemed somewhat uneasy. It's all in the past, why bring it up again? Tears rolled down my cheeks like a broken string of pearls, soaking my collar. My voice choked as I asked, Your Highness, are you really not afraid that one day you might regret the past when you recall it? He replied, I, Bryan Tetlow, have never regretted it. I covered my face and cried for a long time. He stood there patiently, as he always did, calm and indifferent, with a cold and unfeeling nature. After a long bout of crying, I slowly stopped my tears. I took out a pair of scissors from somewhere, the very pair I had wanted to use to cut my wedding dress but was stopped by the nanny. I composed myself and said, "I'm sorry for keeping you waiting, Your Highness. From now on, I'll do my best to control my emotions." Bryan Tetlow and I had known each other for too long. Human hearts are made of flesh. I'm not stone-hearted enough to let go immediately. But with each heartache, I can let go a little more. The deeper the pain, the clearer my mind. One day, I will be able to face him without any resentment. I asked someone to open a box and took out a talisman. "This is a talisman I prayed for Your Highness before you went out to manage the waterworks. I climbed thousands of stone steps to the temple to get it for you." The crown prince looked at me. I casually tossed the talisman off the cliff. "It's useless now. Throw it away. Whoever finds it can have peace and happiness." A look of surprise flashed in his eyes. I picked up a golden silk handkerchief. "This is from when Your Highness won first place in the autumn hunt and insisted that I wipe your sweat with my handkerchief, which you then kept." I cut off a cluster of embroidered ginger flowers that marked my identity from the handkerchief, let go of it, and let the mountain wind carry the lightweight silk into the sky. It swirled around before falling into the rushing river below. "At least it's embroidered with gold thread. If a villager downstream finds it, they can sell it for a few silver coins and buy some meat to improve their meals." I took out a stack of paper from the box and, seeing the words on it, laughed. The first word I learned to write as a child was Bryan, taught to me by Your Highness yourself. "After all these years, you still kept these scraps of paper." I tore the stack of paper into pieces and let the white paper scraps scatter in the wind. One by one, I threw all the useless items, picked out by Jade, down the cliff. They were things that couldn't be pawned or given away. Finally, I picked up a lock of hair. Feeling it was too much, I put some back, then cut it off with the scissors. Perhaps my unexpected actions today, or the memories brought up by each old item, moved him somewhat. The crown prince looked at me with a complicated expression. I met his gaze. "Your Highness, you said you never regretted it. If you ever do, don't come looking for me." "I won't," he replied. I smiled faintly, but my smile soon faded. I released my hand, letting the lock of hair drift into the river. I threw the scissors into the water as well. Watching them sink without a trace, I stood on the high cliff, gazing at the distant mountains like patches of smoke. The river flows from heaven, rushing to the sea, never to return. He watched my actions and finally sighed helplessly. "Miss Widener, are you done with your tantrum?" I replied calmly, I wasn't throwing a tantrum. I lifted my skirt and got into the carriage, my voice carried away by the cold wind. "I'll just pretend my dear crown prince never returned, that he died here and was never found." As a member of the cautious and prudent Widener family, I would never say such rebellious words. But having just been rejected, the crown prince felt guilty towards me, as did the two in the palace. This was one of the few times I could afford to be willful. So, the crown prince's face turned pale with embarrassment, but he said nothing. On the way back, he led a horse, not riding in the same carriage as me. I no longer looked at him, thinking that Jade should have finished her task by now. Sure enough, upon returning to the city, Jade greeted me, her eyes sparkling with pride. "Miss, I've already pawned the remaining items and exchanged them for several baskets of copper coins at the money exchange." Jade was genuinely happy about doing business. She was the daughter of a merchant, sent to be my personal maid and help me manage accounts. She was always focused on money. The items that could be sold were taken by Jade to be exchanged for copper coins. In such a short time, she had handled everything very efficiently. I praised her a few times, and Jade smiled so widely her eyes disappeared. I turned a jade pendant in my hand and calmly instructed, "Distribute the copper coins to the beggars and commoners on the streets." Jade received the order but didn't obediently distribute the coins. Instead, she somehow got a gong and started banging it, attracting the attention of passers-by until a crowd gathered. Jade shouted, "My lady has encountered a joyous occasion and is spreading wealth to share the joy with everyone." I paused and looked at the crowd outside. Even the crown prince looked over. Jade directed the servants to scatter the copper coins along the street like water, shouting, "Celebrate my lady's upcoming coming-of-age ceremony." As the coins were scattered, people rushed to grab them, offering blessings in return. Celebrate my lady's increasing beauty. More copper coins were scattered, and nearby residents, hearing the commotion, also came to grab the coins. The crowd grew larger, surrounding my carriage and the crown prince's, making it impossible to move. With each scattering of coins, Jade made up another reason, slipping in a phrase. Celebrate my lady's newfound freedom, with all the eligible men in the court for her to choose from. Such rebellious words went unnoticed, but they successfully accidentally revealed my identity. The commoners who received the money praised the Widener family's daughter's kind heart. Previously, people had pointed and whispered when they saw the Widener family's carriage. Now, seeing the same carriage, they changed their tune, saying that marrying into the Widener family was a blessing for any family and that the royal family had missed out on a good daughter-in-law. The change in public opinion was expected, but I hadn't anticipated Jade being so bold as to declare my newfound freedom in the streets. I glanced at the crown prince. He was riding a white steed, pushed to the edge of the crowd, with his guards struggling to hold back the pressing people. He must have heard that phrase and seemed in a bad mood. I smiled. Never mind, let Jade have her fun. After all, I had planned to be willful this time. Glancing around, I saw a familiar figure. Looking closely, it was Erika Presley. She was on the edge of the crowd, seemingly unaware of what was happening. But when money was thrown her way, she joined the others in picking it up. When the commotion died down and the people dispersed, the crown prince also noticed her. He stepped forward and pulled her up, his face uncharacteristically dark. "What are you doing here?" I got off the carriage and walked over. Erika looked embarrassed, holding a few copper coins and unsure where to put her hands. I came to find you." The crown prince told her to throw the coins away, and she flung them far away as if they were hot coals. I spoke gently, "Miss Presley, don't worry about those few coins. I have something more valuable to give you." I extended my hand to her, revealing a dragon-patterned jade pendant, milky white with wisps of purple, intricately carved with a lifelike dragon. "This is the token of my engagement with His Highness. When Bryan and I got engaged, he had the finest jade craftsman carve a pair of dragon and phoenix pendants from a rare piece of smoky purple jade. When joined, they formed a seamless whole, a masterpiece of craftsmanship. I wore the dragon pendant, and he wore the phoenix pendant. He hadn't worn his phoenix pendant in a long time. I handed the dragon-patterned jade pendant to Erika, but she hesitated, her eyes repeatedly glancing at the crown prince, seeking his guidance. He took the pendant from my hand, looking puzzled, perhaps unaware that there was an engagement token. Erika eagerly asked, "Can I see it?" The crown prince casually handed the pendant to her. The other half of the pendant might have fallen into the river. "I'll return it to Miss Widener another day." I replied, "No need. It was originally carved by you. You can keep it." As I was about to leave, Erika must have triggered a hidden mechanism, and the dragon-patterned jade pendant shattered into pieces in her hand. She stood frozen, at a loss. The milky white jade scattered on the ground, making a faint, crisp sound. Erika's tears fell immediately, and she looked helpless. "I didn't mean to," Jade sarcastically remarked. "Of course, you just suddenly gained immense strength." I told Jade to shut up, feeling a bit helpless. It must have triggered the mechanism inside the pendant. When Bryan gave me the pendant, he had mischievously said it was one of a kind, crafted by the finest jade artisan, with a complex mechanism inside that would reject anyone else who wore it. I had thought he was joking, but it turned out there really was such a craftsman. But the pendant no longer mattered to me. If it was broken, so be it. The person who gave it to me had long forgotten about it. I glanced at him. The crown prince was staring at the shattered jade, looking dazed and perhaps a bit anxious. After a while, he rubbed his temples and sighed. "If it's broken, so be it." Autumn passed, and winter came, with everything covered in a silver blanket. No longer the future crown princess, I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders. I spent a few months in the mansion, enjoying a rare period of peace. But my mother thought I was too sad and urged me to go out for some fresh air. She picked out an especially exquisite and luxurious invitation from a pile. The Noble Consort is hosting a plum blossom viewing banquet at the 10-mile plum shore outside the capital. Hazley, you can't refuse this one. The Noble Consort specifically sent you an invitation. I took the branch of red plum blossoms that came with the invitation, the faint fragrance clinging to the petals. The Noble Consort, second only to the Empress, had a son, the eldest prince, who was older than the Crown Prince and had been given the title of Prince Steve. Bryan had been the Crown Prince since childhood, favored by the Emperor, always suppressing his other brothers. The Noble Consort and her faction had always behaved cautiously. Now, with the Crown Prince's amnesia and rumors of his abandonment of old ties tarnishing his reputation, some might see this as an opportunity to rise. After my engagement with the Crown Prince was broken off, the Widener family was no longer aligned with him. My father had many students and subordinates. Prince Steve had no official wife. Previously, I had little contact with the Noble Consort. Now, with a formal invitation, she likely wanted to match me with her son and use me to draw in the Widener family. In an instant, I understood the purpose of the plum blossom viewing banquet. I looked at my mother. What do father and mother think? My mother insisted, Hazley, you've been cooped up for too long. It's time to go out and relax. I understood. My father didn't favor Prince Steve. It made sense. Even if the Crown Prince couldn't suppress his brothers, the Emperor was still there. The Emperor only regarded the Crown Prince as his son, the others were just subjects. The Noble Consort was eager to step forward, but with the Emperor's stance unclear, aligning with her could lead to repercussions if the Emperor decided to suppress her faction. The Widener family now stood neutral. We couldn't refuse the Noble Consort's invitation, but responding to her overtures was another matter. I was just going to relax, not to respond to anyone's overtures. I dressed in a scarlet gown, applied delicate makeup, and took Jade to the outskirts of the capital. A stream meandered through the forest, its surface frozen in the depths of winter, with 10 miles of plum blossoms blooming along its banks, forming a fragrant red cloud. It was indeed a good place to relax. As the daughter of the Widener family, I didn't need to arrive too early, but I couldn't be too late either. I timed it perfectly to arrive just before the Noble Consort. I strolled along the riverbank, chatting with Jade, when I turned a corner and bumped into Erika Presley. She was reaching for a branch of plum blossoms when she saw me, lost her footing, and fell to the ground, her eyes instantly filling with tears. She looked up at me tearfully. Miss Widener, long time no see. I looked at her, wanting to help her up. She instinctively backed away as if I were some monster, twisting her ankle in the process. Realizing her reaction was too extreme, she looked at me apologetically. I silently withdrew my hand. I didn't understand why she was so wary of me. She had interfered in my engagement with the Crown Prince. With the Widener family's power, dealing with her would have been easy. But I saw it as Bryan's problem, not hers, and had never troubled her. Yet she seemed afraid of me. I tucked my hands back into my sleeves, warming them with a hand warmer, and looked down at her. Miss Presley, it has indeed been a while. Since our last encounter on the street, I hadn't seen her again. Erika, why are you sitting in the snow? The Crown Prince helped her up, looking at her tearful face with concern. He draped his cloak over her. Seeing me, he didn't wait for me to greet him, his expression displeased. Miss Widener, if you have any grievances, direct them at me, not her. I was speechless and explained briefly. I just happened to run into Miss Presley. She slipped and fell on her own, it had nothing to do with me. The Crown Prince paused and turned to Erika. Erika, is that true? Erika, crying and trembling, couldn't speak for a long time. It looked like I had bullied her into silence. The Crown Prince's face showed anger, then it softened. Miss Widener, I didn't expect you to be like this. Erika is timid and kind-hearted, never making enemies. Apologize to her, and I won't pursue this matter further. Erika, small and pitiful, peeked out from under the cloak, her eyes full of fear. A cold wind blew in my face. I looked up and examined her closely, as if seeing her for the first time. Her eyes had been clear when I first met her. After a short time in the capital, she had learned such petty tricks. I had no intention of fighting with her, but I wouldn't let anyone provoke me either. So, I apologized. I'm sorry. It was my fault. If I had known Miss Presley was so timid, I wouldn't have walked along the riverbank and accidentally run into her. In the future, wherever Miss Presley is, I'll make sure to avoid her by 3 miles and stay out of her sight. My sarcastic words left the two of them stunned. Perhaps my image as a dignified noble lady was too ingrained in their minds. They hadn't expected me to be so sharp-tongued. I hadn't expected it myself. I realized I had become more reckless lately, but it felt good. I smiled. To make amends, I'll have someone pick that branch of plum blossoms for you, I said to Erika. I asked Jade to reach for the branch, and she exaggeratedly twisted her body for a while before finally breaking it off. Then she accidentally slipped and fell into the snow. I saw her secretly pinch her thigh, and tears immediately streamed down her face. She looked at me pitifully. Miss, someone scared me and made me fall. You must stand up for me. She glanced meaningfully at Erika. I scolded Jade. It's your own fault for being so timid, like a scared rabbit. Get up. Do you think the crown prince is blind? The crown prince's face darkened. Jade got up, muttering, I wouldn't dare compare myself to a rabbit. The one you used to have would throw a tantrum and make the whole Widener residence tremble. I laughed, the frustration of being wronged disappearing. I took the plum blossoms and walked steadily to Erika, placing them in the cloaks for a trim. I looked at the crown prince. I've apologized and made amends. Is your highness satisfied? He naturally understood the mockery in my actions and seemed disbelieving. At this moment, a man in luxurious clothing, resembling the crown prince, approached clapping. Wonderful, truly wonderful. 2 ladies falling in the same place, this plum tree must be unlucky. It was Prince Steve. His words confirmed that Erika's fall had nothing to do with me. Erika's face turned pale. The crown prince glanced at her, disbelief in his eyes, but said nothing. He turned to me and apologized. I'm sorry for misunderstanding you, Miss Widener. I smiled. No problem. Whether you believe me or not is your business. He hesitated. Prince Steve seized the opportunity. Brother, I came to fetch you and saw the whole thing. Since everything is clear now, let's go. The banquet is about to start. He then greeted me. Miss Widener, you look more beautiful than the plum blossoms in that red dress today. I politely smiled but didn't respond. Praising his brother's ex-fiancée in front of him, he was truly foolish. As I left, I glanced back at Erika. Miss Presley, if I'm not mistaken, the cloak you're wearing was a birthday gift I gave His Highness 1 year. It has a ginger embroidered in the corner. I usually marked my items with a ginger flower and the cloak. When Bryan made me angry, I temporarily changed the ginger flowers into a piece of ugly ginger. The servants in the Eastern Palace didn't know this and had left the cloak behind when counting items. I remembered it only when I saw it today. Erika stood awkwardly, unsure whether to keep wearing the cloak or return it to me. The crown prince probably didn't realize this cloak was also mine. He pondered for a moment and said, 100,000 silver, to buy this cloak from you, Miss Widener, is this okay? I held the hand warmer, my palm was warm, and the cold wind couldn't get into my sleeves. I don't need this cloak, nor do I need 100,000 silver coins. I don't want something others have worn, so just consider it a gift for Miss Presley. Erika Presley froze in place. The crown prince's face turned slightly pale, but he still responded kindly. Then thank you, Miss Widener. I didn't look at them again.